Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming in on your lunch hour. We very much appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and take in some information that we have to provide. My name is Colleen Stewart. I'm a captain with the Topeka Police Department. I want to talk about just a little bit about the format of today's meeting. If you saw anything of last night's meeting, today is going to be identical in format. But this really is an effort between the police department and the Strengthening Police and Community Partnership program that we have. So this is a replacement of the typical quarterly meeting that the police department has put on. The first quarter was done in the 4 quadrants of the city. The second quarter, because of COVID, was uploaded to YouTube and available online. This third quarter, we have yet again changed the format. In regards to the topics, these are topics of concern that have been brought to us by the community. So we felt it was necessary to provide information to you so that you can then make an informed decision or opinion based on that information. We are going to be holding questions until the end of the session, but this is going to be identical to last night's meeting. One mention about the timing of this meeting. As I mentioned last evening, we had planned this meeting several weeks prior to the council even announcing their special session. So there was no intention of this leading into that. This was purely coincidental as far as timing is concerned, and the topics involved are completely different than those that will be addressed in the special council. So with that, I want to introduce Chief Cochran, and he'll say a few words.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate you being here. If you're familiar with the SPCP, you know this is a program that's been in existence for 3 years, and it's an initiative that was started after officer-involved shooting with Dominic White, and it was through the Department of Justice. This program was developed and helped rolled out. We were the second ones in the country to initiate this program, and it's been I think very vital to this city of Topeka, and we've accomplished a lot of things over the time. Like I said, this program has been in existence for 3 years. This is not brand new, it did not just start, and every time we have an SPCP event or meeting or whatever, it's publicized, it's in the media, and there's coverage on it. And so, again, because that came up last night, we just heard about this program, it's new and all that. No, it's been in existence for 3 years. We've had some very dedicated SPCP members that have been on since the original summit that we had in early 2018. And the whole idea behind this is how do we make the community of Topeka a safer and better place and improve the quality of life for everybody that lives here. We want to make Topeka, the capital city, in the state of Kansas, the best capital city in the country. We want Topeka to be that city where people want to come to and live and raise their kids because it's a great place to live. That's what we want Topeka to be. And that's part of what the SPCP efforts are, is to push those endeavors forward. And so with that, you're going to receive a lot of information. You're going to hear from SPCP members. And they can also tell you how, if you want to get involved, how you can get involved with the program and all that good stuff. So with that, I'll give it back to Captain Stewart.
Thank you, Chief. We do have 4 topics that will be presented to you today. We will start with accreditation. We will talk about defunding and demilitarization. We will talk about the training that the police department goes through and how that has evolved over the past couple of years. And we will end with members of our own SPCP talking about the program and what it has accomplished to date and where we plan on going in the future. So with that, we will start with Lieutenant Munoz, who will talk about accreditation.
Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Munoz, and I'm the Executive Officer for your Topeka Police Department. My topic is to give you a little bit of information on accreditation. So what is CALEA? CALEA is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. It is a private, non-profit corporation that is not a part or obligated to any government unit. It's composed of 21 commissioners, and we go by the best practices of law enforcement. This agency that is accredited, the Topeka Police Department, is the only internationally recognized public safety accrediting body. Just to give you a little bit of information on it, CALEA was started in 1979. Major executives, also in conjunction with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National Sheriff's Association, and the Police Executive Research Forum. So why do we have CALEA? And talking about CALEA and accreditation, there's going to be a presenter that's going to be coming up here to talk about defunding the police department, or the topic about defunding police departments. This is why it's so important. When we go through CALEA, it's not just somebody that comes in, goes through our files for one day, and then they're done, and they go away and they give us an accreditation. They are comprehensive, well thought out written directives. They make reports and analyze to make informed management decisions, preparedness programs in place. They improve the relationships with the community. They strengthen the agency's accountability. They limit liability and risk exposure, and then they assist in the agency's pursuit of excellence. Some of the standards that we have to meet are very critical to the operations of not just the Topeka Police Department, but any law enforcement agency. We are currently trying to obtain our accreditation for our training academy. The Topeka Police Department, the agency itself, is accredited, and the law enforcement side of it, we have over 181 standards that we have to meet. And even with those standards, there is subsections within those standards that have to be met. And your Topeka Police Department has met all of those to be accredited. The training academy, they have over 159 standards they have to meet. And Lieutenant Robbie Simmons will talk about that. They are going through the process right now. We have not received the final report, but I do believe there's some things that need to be fixed, but we will probably get our notification on that certification. We would actually have 3 certifications, and it would be dispatch, but dispatch doesn't fall under the supervision of the city of Topeka. It's through the Sheriff's Department. Some of the things that happen when we have these, the company that comes in, the corporation, they come in every 4 years to do a physical assessment of the law enforcement agency. And for the training facility, they do it every 2 years. We also have what they do every year is a web-based remote assessment where the assessors are able to look through all of our files, our policies, our procedures, make recommendations, changes that need to be done, and we have that throughout the year. There's some of the things that we go through is during the assessment, they look at our policies. They actually come in and do inspections of our facilities. And what I mean by that, they go into our records division, they go into our detectives division, they go to basically our property room, and they tell us what needs to be done in order to meet those standards. It's so critical that sometimes it's as simple as how we process property or evidence is how we even label to the point of where they want the tape to be placed as far as the evidence is concerned. So it is a very, they literally come in and nitpick everything we do so that we meet the best standards, best practices for law enforcement. At the end, they'll come in and then they will set up a meeting where they will allow the citizens of Topeka to come in and either ask questions or express any concerns that they may have. That's how all of this helps your department be the best police department possible. The Topeka Police Department has been accredited since March 25th of 2000. The Topeka Police Department was one of the first agencies that was accredited in the state of Kansas, and we're now one of 11 law enforcement agencies in the state of Kansas that are accredited. As you can see by the numbers down there, the Topeka Police Department has been reaccredited 6 times in 2003, 2006, 2009, 2012, and 2015, and 2018. So we're coming up back for reaccreditation. Some of the members of CALEA, obviously, police departments, sheriff's departments, university police, transit police, the highway patrol, game and enforcement, and state investigators. This is just some of the agencies. There's a lot more. If you go to the CALEA website, they have, you can look on their state, you can look internationally where they've gone to other countries. And so it's not just nationally, this is international. Some of the topics of accreditation, and the one at the very top is a very hot topic, and that's the use of force, how we make our arrest, how we do traffic enforcement, criminal intelligence, our training, and like I said earlier, our training academy is going through an accreditation where they will have to meet those standards. They come in and go through our equipment, the equipment that we have on, the equipment that we have for law enforcement use, and some of that will be discussed when they talk about demilitarization of law enforcement. They'll come in and go over our supervision, how we discipline our officers, how we discipline our sworn officers, and also our civilian employees, and obviously over our human resources. These are all topics that, to me, I think are very important right now, especially things that are being talked about nationally. Accreditation may not be that interesting to a lot of people, but based on the topics that are going to be discussed later on today, I think it's important that you guys know that your Topeka Police Department is meeting all of those standards, and we have several times since 2000. So we'll come back if we have any questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Our next presenter is Mr. John Nave, who will be speaking on defunding and demilitarization. Mr. Nave currently works as the Kansas AFL-CIO Executive Vice President. He's worked since the early 90s in the political arena, serving as the City Council person from 2003 to 2007. He currently serves on the Topeka Police Department's Chiefs Advisory Council, as well as recently being appointed by Governor Kelly to the State Commission on Racial Equity and Justice. Mr. Nave.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Well, they asked me to come and speak and kind of give some thoughts on what's current here in our city, the capital city of Kansas. I've been involved in the political arena, plus in the community for a very long time here, and I love this city. And we have a great community. But one of the things that one of the agencies that we have to acknowledge is our law enforcement community and how it wants to partner with the community and create that perfect city as the chief is talking about. And we can get there, but it's gonna take all of us together. And one of the topics, of course, has been discussed nationally is, you hear that buzzword and the defunding the police. And which means some people think, well, we're going to take this money away from the police department and we're going to ship it over to social services. Well, that's a bigger problem than a lot of people that's a bigger problem than what people think, because what you're going to do is you're going to take funding from the police department and put it in social services, which means you're going to reduce officer numbers on the street, possibly. You could also reduce the response times and other critical areas that they serve. Now, there's a bigger underlying issue that a lot of people may not realize. We have so many, you have defunding the police, and then you have the underlying issues that all correlate, which is education, mental illness, the ability to do the programs that they have here already. And they have several different programs. And I'm going to touch base on them here in a minute. But when we start to do that process, we have to realize the roles that they serve to protect and keep our communities safe. But that becomes a partnership from all of us, from the community. We have to help protect our community and make it the place that we want it to be. From my example, I'm speaking for my community, in my neighborhood, we all know one another. We may not break bread every day, but we do know one another, and we look out for one another. And that's that's not a hard task to do. It's just about communicating with your neighbors, help keeping your neighbors safe, which helps keep you safe. When you let them know that you're out there supporting the community, the neighborhood that you live in, and ask them to be a part of that, that helps our law enforcement community to do their job, okay, to make us safe. They have several programs that some are donation funded. Also, there are some in the budget. But again, there's a much bigger issue, which some of these points that I will be talking about, it takes all of us together to make this the great city that we live in. One of the things that some of the programs, well, I'm going to change this word from defund to reallocate. Okay, we want to reallocate some funds, that's fine. But let's make sure that we have enough manpower on the street, there adequate staffing. Let's make sure that they have the tools to do their job. Let's make sure that they have those officers that are engaged in the community, that their task is to develop that partnership and keep us safe, okay? But there's so many other critical issues that have come about over the years that have brought us to the state where we're at now. Okay, but I'm going to touch base on some of the programs that the police department have, and there's several. So we have community policing. Our community police officers are out there patrolling the neighborhoods. Some of the things that they are tasked to do is, of course, keep our neighborhoods safe, but also look at issues that affect our neighborhoods: dilapidated housing, maintenance code, criminal activity, okay? And that's one of the bigger criminal activity, to make sure our homes are safe, okay? Again, that partnership comes back to let's all help keep our community safe, our neighborhood safe. So the police community unit, what they do is they go out and they do this job and they maintenance, and they take report, they give that information back to the city so the city can help handle these issues. Again, we call, they come, we support them. Okay, the community police unit. Now, the next program that it's been on for like several years now, is the behavioral health unit. This unit helps deal with issues with mental illness. They get so many calls that some are categorized in maybe a criminal activity or domestic, but some of these issues also dealing with mental health. That's a big section in the issues that the police officers are dealing with. So what they've done is they partnered with various agencies, other agencies in the city, and created this unit. And I'm going to give you some of the partners: the Topeka Police Department, Shawnee County Sheriff's Department, the Shawnee County Critical Incident Team, Crisis Intervention Team, the Vallejo Behavioral Health, the National Alliance on Mental Health, Kansas, the Shawnee County Department of Corrections, Stormont Vale, Family Service and Guidance Center, the Veterans Administration, Topeka Rescue Administration. Now, when I gave that whole list of the partners, they too have a whole issues of things that they cover for the entire community. But you see, that's a partnership. They're working with everybody. They're working with the law enforcement community. Okay, so this is one unit that has been around for the last several years, and it's critical. We cannot let this unit go. We need to continue to support it and give it the funding. And I'm happy to hear that the City Council increased its funding to support that program, I think. So I give thanks to those council members. Another program that are a partnership with 501 is the Topeka Center for Advanced Learning Careers, Tcap. It's a good program for freshmen and sophomores to learn about law enforcement or other critical careers that they may want to go in. Okay, and they've got some good programs in that, and a beautiful program on the west side of the city. The Police Athletic League, we know about PAL. My children did it. My siblings, when they were younger, did it. A lot of families across the community did it, participated in the PAL League. Okay, that's a donation-funded program. We continue to support that, and I encourage more support. The Strategic Leadership Academy, that is a program that is based in a partnership that the chief is becoming a good friend of, or they've developed that partnership. And the purpose of it is to foster communication, understanding between the police department and the community. The program has a steering committee, which subcommittees that tasked with identifying and addressing police community issues. The police department is a partner with this organization, and it's a very good program. Okay, another program that I'm really excited about is the Youth Outreach, the Kids OK program. This is a program that ministered primarily African-American males, young high school kids. This is a program that's very, very successful. These kids number around 180 kids whose grade point average is 2.9. The national average is 1.8. But these kids are good kids that could have went the other direction or were going the other direction. But this partnership that the police department has done with this program is outstanding. I met some of these kids, and they're doing very well, and the program is run very well by one of our fine officers. Okay, and we have the Safe Streets. Everybody should know about Safe Streets. They have their annual event that has been around for a very long time, and it's a good program when people come out, again, in the neighborhoods all across the city, that come out and share thoughts and ideas and look at what's been done very good with the city programs in our community with law enforcement and all the other programs that are close with that and tied with that. So those are some of the programs that they've done. Now there's many more that can be done, but it takes all of us to come up with those strategic ideas. We have the Human Relations Commission. It's been around for a long time here in the city of Topeka. You can go to their website and find out what their mission is and what they're charged to do, but also a place that you can get information. Okay, so these programs are just some of the things that the law enforcement community is involved in, and so the next thing that I want to talk about is when they hear the word demilitarize the police. Now, my thing is this: if we want to make a change, we have to change more than just their uniforms. We have to change their hearts. We have to change their minds, and that's through communication, okay? And being engaged in our community with our law enforcement officers. The chief has done a good job about doing some changes. He's changed their dress form to where all the different departments are all in the same dress blues, not no military green fatigues. Okay, we have to blending that together. What we've seen across the country, it's in our major cities is something different from Kansas. Kansas is not like that, but if that's because it's unique, it doesn't have the demographics of where across the country we're in the center of the country, and this is the best place to be in Kansas. And so we're always a work in progress. This is the capital of Kansas. So that's again what we have to do as a collective whole, is to make our community better and make it safer. Also the chief has done, they have a K-9 unit. They changed the dress form in there to match the blue with the standard uniform wear. And then they also, he has changed out those high-powered weapons, and some of those, that's a process in work. Now, what they do have, what I want to talk about, which is a good thing too, is they have a tactical tank or vehicle. The thing about this was donated. This was donated to the department by Homeland Security. So this wasn't something that they said, okay, we took out of our budget. This was given to for Northeast Kansas, and it's used, and I've seen it used to protect citizens right here in Topeka. Okay, and one thing that I thought about last night that I didn't get to say was that, you know, cities around, incidents can happen on an instant. An incident where we've seen Oklahoma City, any major thing can happen at any given time in any community. And our officers have to have those tools to effectively keep our community safe. Now, we had some discussion last night that more can be, of course, more can be done, but officers have to have the tools to do their job. Yes. Now, here's the thing. People that need to understand that when you want all these services from our police department, you got to realize that's going to cost money. So what do you want? Which means you're going to be paying higher taxes, and nobody wants higher taxes. So what it comes down to is creative ideas, partnerships in the community with agencies, companies, everything that's going to help them do what they have to do, and that creates a safe environment and a growing and thriving community. Okay. Another topic that before I close is that, and we heard last night about the role of law enforcement and all of the issues that they're facing here in the community, that the community's facing. We have mental illness, we have homelessness. Well, it takes a community to bring it together and help eliminate those issues, okay, and help those in need, okay, and that's what we want to become, that giving community and a growing and thriving community. But in order to change that, there's going to be leadership in place that has to do that. Those are elected leaders at the county, the city, and state. At the end of the day, that's where it comes down to, which means we have to stay awake, or stay woke, as they say, and elect leaders that are going to address our issues, which means you have to vote all across the community. From 18 on up, you got to get out and exercise your right to vote, to put those individuals in place that are going to take care of your community. And those elected officials, you hold them responsible for that. That's their charge. They work for you. And so I sit on the commission of racial equity and justice. And we've had some meetings, Zoom meetings, and listening sessions from communities all across the state. We want to hear from Topeka. I've asked Captain Stewart to hand out this form, which gives all of the information on how to contact the governor's office and submit your thoughts and ideas. We want to hear from the community. We're hearing from Wichita, Lawrence, Kansas City, Kansas, Salina, Hutch, Garden City. We want to hear from the communities all across the state, but we also want to hear from our Topeka community, the capital. And this is where you get a chance to voice of what you think can be done to help create that quality of life for all people. So this is here for to have that handed out. So I'll close with this. we have to take care of our neighborhoods. It's our responsibility as well. And when we do that, we make it a better community. We make capital city of Topeka, Kansas the best that it can be, one of the best first-class cities in the country. So thank you, and if you have any questions at the end of our session, we'll be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nave. Our next presentation is about the training division, and that will be presented by our Training Academy Director, Lieutenant Robbie Simmons.
Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Robbie Simmons with the Topeka Police Department, and I am the Training Director, which means I oversee recruiting and hiring, the Training Academy, and then also our in-service. And so we're going to focus on the Academy and in-service since we're talking about training today. One of the questions that we get asked very often is, how do we decide what to train in? And really it boils down to, for the most part, these 4 agencies right here: KLATC, Kansas Seapost, CALEA, and then our own agency. And we're going to talk about each one of those real quick. KLATC is the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center, which is housed in Hutchinson, Kansas. What they do is they create the state standard for basic training. So all law enforcement officers in the state of Kansas have, at a minimum, the same 560 hours of training that they mandate. They created the curriculum, they submit that to Kansas Seapost, and then Kansas Seapost approves it. And we'll talk about Seapost in just a moment. Not only do they mandate the number of hours, but they also mandate what the learning objectives are within that 560 hours. So there's 111 classes that we have to have and fulfill for that 560 hours at a minimum. So Topeka PD, we are a satellite academy. Not everyone is as lucky as we are. A lot of agencies throughout the state of Kansas have to send their recruits all the way to Hutchinson. So they drive however many hours it takes to get there, and then they have a dormitory style of arrangement. So they actually live on campus during the week, drive home during the weekends, and come back. They do that for 14 weeks. We are lucky enough, we don't have to send our officers there. We have our own academy. And there's a lot of benefits to that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the big thing to understand here is that we are an extension of KLATC. We have a lot of mandates that we have to fulfill that KLATC requires. So this is just a side-by-side quick comparison of our academies with TPD and KLATC. This isn't, of course, all of the topics. These are just a few, some of the hot button issues that have come up here recently. But on the left side with TPD Academy, where you see the blue, those are the additional hours that we put into those required classes. So DT, we do 60 hours, which is 20 hours more than what KLATC requires. And then you can go down the list and look at the rest of those with communications, which that includes de-escalation, firearms, crisis management, law enforcement, health, and so on. One of the classes that I put in here, cultural diversity, is a class that's not even required by KLATC, but that's something that we add in. So not only do we add extra hours on the required classes, we also put in extra classes that are not even required. All in all, we provide 960 hours in our academy, as opposed to the 560 that is required. So that's an extra 10 weeks. So instead of the 14-week academy, we have a 24-week academy. Kansas Seapost, which I mentioned earlier, is the Kansas Commission on Peace Officers Standards and Training. This is a 12-member body appointed by the governor. This is also a certifying agency. So in the state of Kansas, if you're a law enforcement officer, this is the certifying agency. They're the ones that provide either a provisional or a permanent certification. So let's say we hire somebody brand new, we submit the paperwork to Kansas Seapost, and assuming that they meet all of the standards and qualifications, they receive a provisional certification, which means that we have a year to get them through the basic academy, and then they will receive a permanent certification. And as I mentioned before, they approve the core curriculum for the basic training. On top of that, in order to stay, to maintain that permanent certification, we have to go through 40 hours of a year of continuing education, and it has to be applicable training. It can't just be any training. It has to be law enforcement related. And basically that's determined by our chief and the head of whatever agency we're speaking of. and then it's confirmed by Kansas Sea Post. Because of the specific number of hours we have to have per year, we're very meticulous in our tracking of the training hours. We have to document every training that we go to, and it's actually a pretty complicated process, but it's very important for our jobs. Kansas Sea Post also requires firearms qualification a minimum once a year. We actually do that a minimum of twice a year. So we exceed that standard, of course. Training sources can come from universities, colleges. We provide our own training, which is on the next slide. We'll talk about that, our in-service, and then we also send officers to outside training. So TPD in-service, we offer a minimum of that 40 hours, and obviously that's to our benefit. We want to make sure that all of our officers maintain their permanent certification, because if they don't, then they can have it revoked, and then we're down an officer. So we provide a minimum. So this year, we're actually providing 48 hours. There's just so many things that we want to train in this year that we went over what we normally do. And then, of course, we'll do the firearms qualification twice a year again. We still send officers to outside training, and we also host a lot of training. A lot of people don't know this, but we have our training center, regional training center, held at Nickel Armory, which is with the National Guard. And that's where our academy is at. That's where we host our trainings. And most of our in-service training is going to be there as well. Between outside training and hosting, so this is not including our in-service training that we provide. Outside training and hosting, we had 152 different classes in 2019. Just to give you an idea, 2020 is going to look a little bit different. These are unprecedented times with COVID-19. It's difficult to have a lot of people in a room, as you guys can see here today, but we've been doing the best that we can with what we have. All right, so we have to have the 40 hours. Now let's talk about what classes are required for in-service. And this is kind of a combination of CALEA, Kansas Sea Post, department policy, and of course our chief of police. So the first one here that I listed, bias-based policing, that's actually a state statute that we have to follow. We have to have a policy with specific language based off of that statute, and then we also have to require training every single year for bias-based policing. And that's also a CALEA standard as well. Firearms is required annually, like we talked about. That's a Kansas Sea Post requirement. TASER is required annually. It's another CALEA. Basically, the rest of these, legal updates, ethics, mental health refresher, those are all CALEA standards that we have to follow. And if we don't follow those, then we don't follow that standard for CALEA to get accredited. The mental health refresher, that's one that it's required every 3 years, but we far surpass that. That's something that we train in way more than every 3 years. Additional in-service stuff that we have added at TPD, we will start doing quarterly use of force training, which is a combination of firearms, defensive tactics, de-escalation will be built in that, intermediate weapons, and scenario-based training and patrol tactics. And this is all stuff that is obviously going to help keep the officer safe, but also the citizens that we interact with safe. Fair and impartial policing is something that we added a few years ago, but it is being used far more often. It's become more popular. That particular class speaks a lot about implicit and explicit biases, which is extremely important. It's a hot button issue right now. So we have two officers that we sent, or actually I think we have 3 officers that are certified to instruct fair and impartial policing. And it's a very good class and something that we're going to be doing an in-service again this year. We've had more search and seizure and de-escalation. De-escalation, that word comes up all the time in training because it's something that we train on quite a bit, and it's something that we're going to build into more of our trainings in the future. Looking back, I just kind of wanted to give somewhat of an example of how some of our hours have gone up. Cultural awareness has, of course, become more important, and it's something that we built into our academy, we've built into in-service, and the hours are just going to continue to go up in these areas. Bias-based policing, fair and impartial policing, all these things are going to become even more important as we move forward with our training. So looking forward, 2021, and when I say 2021, our training years are a little different. It's not calendar years. So our 2021 training year started July 1st of this year, and it goes until June 30th of next year. So we're in the 2021 training year right now. So these are just some of the classes. This isn't all of it, but 2 hours of fair and impartial policing, 3 hours of de-escalation, 1 hour, well, it's 2 hours. ABLE and EPIC are pretty similar. They're about the same thing. They're just two different programs that have kind of merged. ABLE is active bystandership for law enforcement, and a lot of that is, the way that I would sum it up is it's peer intervention. We're looking at avoiding police misconduct and police mistakes, and we're focusing on officer health and wellness. We're hoping to be proactive, but also reactive. If we see something that is occurring that shouldn't be happening, we need to react to that right away. But we also want to be proactive in that we want to focus on the officer and make sure that they're at the right state of mind, right? And so we're sending several officers to this train the trainer class, and those officers are going to bring it back. They're going to teach it in service this year for the 2021 training year, and then also we're going to be teaching that in the academy. And then speaking of the academy, we have a new class that will be starting October 19th, and that course schedule is still being worked on, but we look to submit that to KLATC here before too long. But you're going to see a lot of increases in all these topics that we've talked about today. These are things that we're focusing on and that we are committed to improving. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Simmons. Our last presentation for this meeting is from our SPCP, our Strengthening Police and Community Partnerships. We have Chrissy Russell, Danielle Twemlow, Ken Nichols, and Taylor Schley.
Hello, so we just want to thank everybody for coming out today and for all the people at home that are tuning in on Facebook Live. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our mission statement and our logo that we came up with. So our mission statement is to foster a trusting relationship between law enforcement and the community by facilitating positive engagements with the intention of creating organizational change and process improvements reflecting a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I just want to talk a little bit about it, is that this really is a partnership. We work directly with, TPD. We work with Chief Cochran and other leadership staff and all of the officers. This is really meant to be a group to help everyone. Our officers live and work in this community as well, so it's not meant to be an attack on the police department. It's more, like we said, to create positive interactions between the community and police and to improve in areas where we think we can. So I'll pass it on to the group and they'll tell you a little bit more about SPCP.
Good afternoon. My name is Chrissy Russell, and I've been with SPCP since the beginning in 2018. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of history about how SPCP Council came about, and then we're going to talk about some things that were identified and what has been worked on since then. So SPCP is a Department of Justice program that's designed to improve public safety and the relationship with local law enforcement through problem solving and police community partnerships. SPCP is not led by the police department. It's a community-led program. In June 2018, a large community meeting was held at Washburn University. Over 100 citizens and community leaders attended to discuss challenges with law enforcement in Topeka. At the meeting, we broke out into smaller groups to discuss the issues and the challenges that we specifically saw in our areas of the community. We identified those issues that were most important to us and that we wanted to work on with the police department. After we met within our small groups, we then reconvened with a larger group. And we all put all of the issues that we identified with the community and the police department on these huge sticky Post-its, and we put them on the wall. And everybody in the large group, and again, it's over 100 people of community members and community leaders, went up and voted on each topic. And so the topics that they identified were the topics that we were going to first start working on. At the end of the meeting, the individuals at the meeting voted on people that they would like to see sit on the council to help advocate for change and see these action items put forth. So the top issues that were identified were broad community issues. This looked like we wanted to enhance the officers' understanding and ability to communicate around issues such as poverty, homelessness, and mental illness, transparency and communication between law enforcement and the community, diversity within the police department. We wanted a police department that looks like our community. Also identified was racial biases. So some of the action items that came from those topics, we met for all of 2018 and into 2019, and we discussed at those meetings, the council with members of the police department. The chief was at most every single one of those meetings. We had an open dialogue. We did not always agree on the things that we were talking about, but the purpose is that we were able to listen to each other and problem solve. We all had the same goal of making our community a better place, not only for our community members, but also so that our officers felt safer as well. So some of our action items were, one, the police department created a partnership with Washburn University, Lincoln University, and Mississippi State to recruit diverse candidates for the police department. The hiring process at the police department has been streamlined. It used to be a very long process, but it's now been streamlined. We've increased the cultural competency training and the inclusion of implicit bias training in the academy and in continuing education for all officers. The creation of an officer position that acts as a liaison between community members and families and the police department when an incident occurs. The creation of the independent police auditor position that is supervised by the city manager and is not obligated to the police department. There's now a GPS system of dispatching calls to officers. And then finally, we have quarterly meetings that allow SPCP to update the community on the things that we've accomplished and the things we're working on, and then to also receive feedback.
So which brings us to moving forward. So it's always important for any group or organization to spend time self-reflecting and celebrate successes, but it's also important to spend time reevaluating to look for improvements that need to be made in order for that success to continue. SPCP has begun that process with our mission statement being a guide. To make this growth possible, we need you. We need each and every one of you to help us develop community-driven goals as we move forward. This is why we're launching a survey today to gather, or yesterday, as a matter of fact, to gather feedback on what you see as important steps that must be taken to build the trust between law enforcement and the community, to help us set goals on building the bridge we can all walk on safely and confidently across. This survey was developed by the Department of Justice and assesses several key components that involve our local law enforcement agency: community involvement, safety, procedural justice, performance, contact, and satisfaction. We are challenging everyone to take less than 5 minutes to give thoughtful consideration to these survey questions. Provide your feedback, and most importantly, offer solutions. Use your voice to share your story. The survey will not ask for your personal contact information. The only thing that we have added as SPCP to this is we've asked for a zip code, and we've actually given an opportunity, a spot at the end, to type in your feedback or your comments as well. So that is the only difference between the one the Department of Justice developed and the one that we're using. We just added those two components on there. We do also have it in Spanish and some QR codes for easy access. So they will be found on Facebook. You can just take your phone, pull up the camera, you put that QR code in your camera screen, and it should pop right up for you to fill out. We know not everyone has access to internet as well, so there are some paper copies for the scanning today, but we will also provide paper copies in the lobby of the Topeka Police Department, and hopefully other organizations and businesses will also have the opportunity to print some off and have them available for people if they need so. So we will also have opportunities, which Ken will discuss next, on how people can contact us personally at SPCP. So we encourage you to contact us with questions, concerns. As a community, we must come together to heal and grow and feel excited that there are lots of opportunities to start this process. So we want you to take these first steps to start this survey to help us gather that information, preferably by August 31st, if possible. So, Ken?
How you doing? My name is Kenneth. I live in Topeka. I love it. I chose this PowerPoint. The rest of this slide is to give people the opportunity to voice what they have concerns in the community. I love Topeka. I want to get Topeka back to where we were, the safest city, the safest capital in the United States. But like I said, like we've all said, we need you. We need the community. We need your help. Using that survey will help us a lot. I love this community. I can't say it enough. I'm glad I have my daughter and my wife in this community and we're raising them. But we have to talk and work together, not one side versus everything. We're united. And we have to do that by speaking up. If you want to join us, send us an email to the email that we have up there, and we're willing to listen. We're wanting to sit down and help out. We want to be in the community. Like I said, none of us are getting paid. This is something that we do because we love it. We have a passion for making change, and we want to get back to that place where everybody can walk around and be happy and not have to fear something. So please, please help us out. Get on there, take the survey, and also come join us. When we have meetings, you can come in and tell us what you feel is wrong with the community. We have a great chief. He listens to us. He's actually taking what we're saying and he's using it to try to implement different things. You've seen it. It's working. We just got to understand it's a slow change. Nothing's going to be fast. It is a very slow change, and change will come. But give us time. We have to do it, but we have to do it as a community.
Thank you guys very much for that presentation. So we, I believe, have a few minutes for questions. If you do have a question, I would just ask that you come up to the podium here at the front of the room, one at a time.
It can be for any of the speakers.
And to clarify, that is for any of the speakers.
You're up front, sure. Go ahead.
I have questions of, we had community officers and we haven't been able to have meetings. I'm a president of North Topeka West NIA. And we like when the community officers come to our meetings and discuss. But in the past, we've had a community officer that acted like he didn't want to do anything. We asked him to help us with code violations. He said he couldn't do it. We found out, yes, he could have. And eventually, we put enough pressure on him, and he did do what he was supposed to do. What I hear in my area is that when we do call and respond, and sometimes it's always the same person that does, then we get labeled as troublemakers because we're constantly calling and we're constantly reporting. It's like we get treated like we're being too nosy. We should keep our nose to ourselves and not report things. Well, and then you guys tell us that we should report things. So we're confused. I had an incident in November that I called the fire department on. It became just a fire department thing. But at the end, it became a police department thing. And the officer that showed up was extremely rude to me. I don't know why he came that way. I had to report him. But the situation, I wanted to give a person a ticket because the person came on my property, and it's not the first time I have a 911 phone call with this guy threatening to kill me. This guy came on my property again and threatened to kill me, but nobody has allowed me to do anything about it, and it's been November. It took me about 3 months to get them to go through and Costo, is that his name?
I don't know.
Colazo. I had to go through Colazo and have them deal with the police officer, but nobody has ever come back to me to tell me exactly what all was said.
So is your question about the process? Because I haven't heard the question.
Yeah, it's the process, because the process is not working.
Okay. So as far as the topics that were presented in this meeting, do you have a question? If you'd like to talk about your experiences
Right.
and your displeasure
Well,
or dissatisfaction in those experiences, we can certainly step outside and have that
And that's
conversation.
understandable. You want us to be with the community we kind of need help because for a while, we don't know how to connect with you guys anymore. There's just this, you guys were standoffish for a while, and we wanted to connect, but we got to the point where now we don't know how to connect with you because there was such bad blood there for a while. Nobody wanted to call you guys because when we called, we didn't get a good response. So that's something we need to work on.
And that's definitely noted, and definitely will be something that we
that's one of the things
continue to work on.
Wanted to bring up.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
My name is Kim Borchers, and folks, thank you for your work. And law enforcement, thank you for your work and your sacrifices. I'm here not because I live in Topeka, but my kids are educated in city proper. I spend a lot of money in Topeka, so you guys like my sales tax because that helps pay for you guys, right? And my husband practices medicine here in this community. Couple questions, and I know how this works. There's a catalyst for all of us, right, that gets us involved in something, and so an organization starts. And it sounds like this happened 3 years ago. I think I'm pretty attuned to my community, but I was not aware of even that meeting happening. So my question to you is it sounds like you guys had kind of a corpus group that started. How are you going to look to expand to bring in other folks? Captain, I think I visited with you. We talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusivity. It is very clear, if anybody's been following Facebook, that there are many people who do not feel they are being included in these discussions. And I think everybody has the same end goal, right? Which is to make Topeka a safe place to live. So I'd like to see how that's going to work to include more people, because I think you have more people's attention. And then I also think communication is important. I don't know how we're communicating these things to people, right? Because I know some really great people who love this community who don't know about this. I do want to say kudos to the programming. Like I said, I'm glad I'm here. I'm a firm believer you've got to collect all the information before you make a judgment call on stuff. Mr. Nave, I love the OK program. I know they've done it in Wyandotte County. They've had major successes. I sat and saw some of the graduates of that, these 5 young African-American boys who had great mentors. It was the church, law enforcement, and education that came together. So I think there's some good stuff there. I am curious, you mentioned improvements, key performance indicators. What are we starting at? What are we looking at all these programs? How do we know they're getting better? Which ones do we get rid of, even though it's someone's baby? Maybe it needs to go. So I'm just curious how those things and how those are publicized. Maybe they're out there and I'm missing them, but I'm just throwing that out there.
So that's a good question. Due to COVID, a lot of things had to shift. Like we were going out into the community. That was one of the first things was we're in the communities, going to each of the districts or zones, if you want to call it, and having the meetings and telling people about it. We sat down and had a meeting about it too. This is the biggest way is to put that email out there. Some people don't want to come out there and have a meeting due to COVID. How are we going to reach those people? So the email is the best way, and once we get further on to the point where we don't have to worry about restrictions on numbers and people, we can open back up and start getting people back out there and get them back in a centralized location to help. But the biggest thing right now is we have to use what we can, which is the internet and the email address to try to get this going back up and get everybody's voice heard. That's why we're pushing this so hard.
Well, let me just add and I'll sit down. I think part of what has happened, there has been something conflated between what you're doing and an organization called 8 Can't Wait. Now, I'm just curious how many people who are on this group are also pushing the 8 Can't Wait? Are we familiar with that?
What I would say is that Chief Cochran has spoken on that, and the police department already practices most of those things through their things. So I'm not really sure.
Well, I'm just curious because my question is how many people who are participating in this group right here are also part of that movement for that meeting that was called with the mayor? Because I think that matters.
And I'm not I'm not sure exactly how that matters, only because the council itself has very lively discussions, and no one opinion is any louder than another. And then we come to common ground and viable solutions. So if and we encourage differing perspectives on that council to have that lively discussion. So a person's personal opinion of 8 can't wait, positive or negative, really isn't going to affect the outcome of that council, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I think the reason why I'm asking the question is I think it does matter from perception. And any of us who work in politics and even law enforcement, right? Perception is reality. That's why you probably have a real tough time right now recruiting people. I've got 5 young men that I know. I've known them since they were little guys. They were going to be Topeka law enforcement officers. And because of the environment today and how law enforcement is viewed, they are choosing different professions, and they would have been great law enforcement officers. So the reason why I'm asking that is because perception does matter, and that those philosophies are viewed as a Trojan horse for literally abolishing the police. If you go to the website, it is all connected, but it's stepping stones. So it does matter that's why I'm asking the question. So, but thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your volunteerism.
Hi, thank you for your service. Thank you for educating me on what you guys are already doing. I'm glad to hear that. My question is to you, is it Mr. Nave? Am I pronouncing it right? Okay. I'm going to ask you a really hard question that there's no way you can answer, but for me, it's the elephant in the room. My experience in Topeka as I've grown up here, my husband and I own properties. I've been highly involved on the east side in several ministries. And for several years, I was immersed full time. And when I heard you speak about neighborhoods, I agree with you. But I also know that we have neighborhoods where neighbors are afraid of neighbors, where neighbors are fearful that when they leave for work, that their property will be damaged, their property will be stolen, whether that's their water from the outside spigot or something else. Right. Those neighborhoods continue to be struggling neighborhoods, and I know from working in them, it's a hard problem to solve. So I'm interested in knowing, I've seen how COVID has taken down some of our social structures. My concerns over the kids that are in those neighborhoods have lost all of their social structures and their supports. And where are we going with that? Because when I see these things continue to deteriorate and become our new normal, the problem that used to be one of those that I go, I don't know how you solve this, gets to be bigger and bigger and bigger because those services are deteriorating. You know, like the National Night Out. The ministry I was part of, that's how we started. I drove a truck through one of our neighborhoods with ice cream and told the kids there was a party in the park. We had 100 kids show up in an hour. Well, we can't do that anymore. We're being limited. So I fear that the more we breed fear, we are watching our communities deteriorate even further. And one last thing that I will give you a perspective on is the only reason I got involved in communities was because of an adopted daughter that came from a community where she had fallen through every crack there was. And at 3 years old, I became her 5th mom. At 16, she still faces mental illness, intellectual disability that will plague her the rest of her life, that we can't fix because of alcohol use during pregnancy. I know these kids face enormous problems. And the neighborhoods that most people don't even know exist. What are we doing? Because I just keep seeing more and more taken away.
First, I want to thank you for your all your efforts and what you're doing in your businesses and your volunteerism and your initiative to try to keep things going in these neighborhoods. And that's the ultimate goal, is we must continue to create and be innovative in addressing that particular issue through our education system, our school system. The schools are at a strain as well.
Yeah.
And
under normal circumstances.
Yes, and our organizations are at a strain. This pandemic has changed the face of our community, at least for the next 2 years. So it goes with saying that if we continue to do what is asked by our governor, and that's a hardship to have to say we got to wear the mask, we got to do certain things, but it affects us economically, because when these things are not adhered to, then it becomes companies, small businesses, agencies, all kind of have to shut down. So we have to do the things necessary to get back. The hardship is we have to make those hard decisions to do what is asked of us, and so we can get back to that point to where those kids can play in the neighborhoods, and you can drive the truck down the street to the park, and so that's what we must do. The education, the 501 school district, all the school districts in our region, have those same issues. So, and they're strained and they're frustrated. Our teachers are. So, it takes creative mind, our elected officials, partnering with also our agencies. It's not an ending process. This is a tough time right now. We're going to get through it, and it's going to take a little time, but we're going to get through it. We've seen this through history. Back in the early 1900s, they got through it. We will get through this. It's just a matter of making sure we do the right things necessary so we can keep all these companies, agencies, small business owners afloat. Okay?
I guess I'm just not quite sure. I agree that in 2 years, that knowing where we were when things were normal, the deterioration, the number of kids that drop out of school because they aren't getting the social supports, they aren't participating like they used to. Even the use of masks. My daughter's neglect was so significant that when a teacher puts this on, it handicaps her further.
Right.
Because she didn't learn those things, and we're going to start doing this to thousands.
Yeah. We're in because everybody in this room and across our community, we've never experienced this before. So we're being tested, but through a lot of things. I believe in faith. I believe in the man above, that we're going to get through this. One of the things that again, it's going to take that partnership, as we say, it's a day at a time, week at a time, a month at a time. But we'll get through it. One of the things I do want to recognize, and this can help, is our SRO program here, their SRO program. It's an outstanding program.
I'm familiar.
Okay? They got some fine officers out there. And the partnership between 501 and Hayden High School and the Topeka Police Department, that's a much, much needed program that must stay in place and stay intact. And because those officers have those skill sets to interact and exchange and communicate with these young men and women in the school system, we cannot let that go. So I wanted to make sure they are recognized at the fine job that they do.
They do a great job.
Yeah.
We just have time for a couple more questions.
Can you hear me without my mask off? Okay, good, because I don't want to take it off. Okay. I'm here today, and I'm very surprised there are empty seats. But I wanted you to know perhaps why there are empty seats. I'm a retired teacher, so I'm not trying to figure out how to educate and keep children healthy right now. So I have time on my hands. So I have been watching and trying to be part of the community and helpfulness, just as I was when I was teaching. Facebook was mentioned, and that's where I connect with a lot of people right now, because you can't connect with them when you go places. You can't go places. Facebook has become a real problem. I'm in multiple groups because I fit in multiple groups. Part of my groups are threatening other groups that I'm in. Like, you show up here, you have a problem. Did you guys know that? I was afraid to come today because I thought, okay, they're going to be looking at car tags. Are they going to know who's here? And I'm not talking about the police right now, okay? I'm talking about some ex-police officers, at least that's what they're saying, who are trying to intimidate people of the community who are concerned about some of the same issues that I think we all are. And I'm hoping that all of the groups that I'm a part of on Facebook have everyone in mind for safety and health and to move forward in kindness and love. But I need you guys to know that there are veiled threats that if you put something on Facebook, if you disagree with anyone, or if you ask certain questions, you are being intimidated. I kind of feel caught between a rock and a hard place here, because I've had some experience with police in the past that make me feel intimidated, and I've worked hard to get over that and go, you guys are working hard, I'm working hard, we're all in this together. But then the stuff that's going on in the community is scary. It's scary to the plain old people who aren't forced to be on one side or the other. And if we can't bring those two forces together, then the whole community's not going to buy in. So I just say that. Perception is reality. And the perception of a lot of the people out there in Topeka right now is it's not safe from the COVID, but it's not safe to speak out and how you truly feel, or even ask questions like, what are some of these terms you guys are using? Fear does breed fear. And the they are the us on both sides. Was that a question? Did you know about what's going on Facebook? That was my question.
The only thing I would respond to that is now you have an email address. Now you know of a program that is willing to listen to your concerns, regardless of what side you may decide to be on, and that can contribute to the overall solution to some of these concerns. We can't control what happens on the internet, and it's unfortunate that society has gotten to that point. But now you have a place that you can email with those questions and those concerns. Thank you for that. And this will be the last question for the session. We're already over time. Go ahead.
I have two quick questions. I'm not sure why we're reallocating funding when it seems like the funding is being utilized so well to accomplish the goals that all of you have been working towards. I'm always impressed by how much impact the police department has in the community with the various programs. I know that we've asked the community how we can better relate to the police department and how we can have the police respond to the community. But has anybody reached out to the police department to see what we can do to be better citizens, to help them in their job and support them?
And thank you for that. And that, again, is something that the SPCP is all about. It's a two-way street. It's definitely a two-way street. The community members bring concerns. We have those discussions. And if it takes information to quell some of those myths, to dispel some of those myths, then that is what happens in those discussions. Some of the things that have been brought up cannot come to be just because of other complexities in the system. It may not be a law enforcement component issue. That may be a court system issue or a correctional system issue. So sometimes it's an educational piece as well. So it is a two-way street, just so you know. So we do have people asking how they can help just as much as we can help the community. So thank you for that. And I think with that, we'll conclude the meeting. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.